Imagine a vast, pitch-black ocean, the surface heaving under the weight of a massive tempest. There is no shelter here, only the raw, kinetic energy of crashing water and roaring wind. It is entirely disorienting. At some point, every person enters this environment. These tempests might be physical, like a hurricane threatening a home, but they are often invisible. A sudden cancer diagnosis, a financial collapse, or a crisis of faith. Scripture acknowledges the harsh reality of these moments without promising a frictionless life. Instead, it guarantees the presence of a sovereign God directly in the middle of the suffering. To understand the nature of this peace, we look to three pivotal biblical accounts: Psalm 107, Mark chapter 4, and Matthew chapter 14. When analyzed together, these texts reveal how the believer experiences divine peace, even as their external world falls apart. Biblical peace resides in the localized, undeniable presence of God's sovereign authority, persisting through the most violent external chaos. Long before Jesus walked the shores of Galilee, the Old Testament recorded the experience of sailors caught in a violent sea. Psalm 107 describes them being lifted to the heavens and cast down to the depths, reeling and staggering like drunken men. Their courage melted away. They had reached the specific point the psalmist calls being at their wits' end, where human ingenuity and strength utterly fail. This passage identifies a recurring pattern for the human experience of crisis and God's divine response. This framework maps the interaction across four distinct phases. In phase 1, the tempest, the human experience is marked by exhaustion and confusion. God's response involves allowing us to reach the absolute limit of our self-reliance. Phase 2 is the cry. Faced with total inability, the believer offers a desperate, honest prayer. God responds by listening with deep fatherly compassion. The text suggests that God allows believers to exhaust their own resources so that they have no choice but to enter this cry phase. We see this pattern again in the Gospel of Mark. As the disciples, seasoned fishermen, cross the Sea of Galilee, a windstorm erupts that threatens their lives. They have entered the first phase of the storm, the realization of their own powerlessness. Amidst the roaring squall, Jesus is fast asleep on a pillow in the stern. This sleep is made possible by the hypostatic union. As a man, Jesus is physically exhausted from ministry. As God, he rests in sovereign omnipotence. These two natures are perfectly unified in his person. When the disciples ask, "Do you not care that we are perishing?" they are engaging in the phase 2 cry. Jesus does not assist in bailing water. He stands and exercises absolute sovereign authority to silence the wind. This leads to phase 3, the calm. The human experience turns to awe and relief as God exercises power directly over the elements. Finally, phase 4, the haven, brings deep gladness and renewed worship. God guides his children safely to their intended destination. Christ's sleep demonstrates that true peace is grounded in internal divine authority, which remains trustworthy even when the external world is in chaos. In Matthew 14, the focus shifts from survival to a personal test of faith. During the darkest hour of the night, the disciples see Jesus walking toward them on the churning water. Peter tests this miraculous invitation and successfully steps out of the boat, walking on the waves. This moment reveals how faith and fear interact. While Peter likely felt physiological fear, he made a functional choice to trust. As long as his visual vector remains fixed on Christ, his buoyancy and faith metrics remain high. But when Peter shifts his focus to the wind, his buoyancy metric drops to 0. His spiritual stability is tied directly to his directional focus. As he sinks, Jesus immediately reaches out to catch him, responding to his cry for help with compassion. Crises expose our directional focus. Staying above the waves requires an unbroken gaze on Christ. How exactly do we anchor our souls into this pattern when facing a medical crisis or financial ruin? Honest faith begins with naming specific fears. By identifying exactly what threatens our peace and bringing those names to Jesus, we avoid the bitterness of silent suffering. Step 2 involves developing daily rhythms of spiritual stillness. We follow Christ's example of rest by turning off the noise to recall God's character. Step 3 is the daily refocusing of our gaze. We must actively fight the instinct to stare at the metaphorical wind by meditating on scripture and engaging in worship. Step 4 relies on a community of believers. A church family can hold us up and speak truth when our own faith begins to falter. Step 5 is actively celebrating past faithfulness. Looking back at moments where God has previously delivered us provides the evidence needed to trust Him in the present. Step 6 is responding to deliverance with awe and worship. This cements the spiritual lessons learned during the storm. These steps provide a method for aligning our internal response with the pattern of deliverance found in the Psalms. A crisis exposes whether we are leaning on our own limited understanding or choosing to trust God's sovereign control. Even when our faith falters and we sink, the mechanism of grace remains. Jesus does not abandon us. He reaches out to save us. Let the pattern established in Psalm 107 guide your response to the next inevitable tempest. Abiding with Jesus Christ in the boat offers an unshakable peace that remains elusive to those simply seeking to escape the storm.